Transport Minister Catherine King caught in a web of contradictions over why extra flights for an international airline that would have lowered prices were not in the national interest. After weeks of ducking and weaving over why the Albanese government had blocked Qatar's bid for 28 more flights, today Catherine King held an early morning press conference to try and settle the matter. But her answers only landed her in a world of pain. The minister gave the strong indication that she denied Qatar's request because of a human rights issue, specifically the treatment of 5 Australian women who were subject to invasive strip searches at Qatar Airport 3 years ago.
I received a letter from Mark lawyers on behalf of these women detailing their experiences, which are pretty awful. I signed a letter to the women informing them that that decision had been made on the 10th of July.
King is now being accused of contradicting herself. The Sydney Morning Herald reports that Transport Minister Catherine King has contradicted reports she made 6 weeks ago when she denied the strip searching of a group of Australian women at Doha Airport weighed into her decision to reject Qatar Airways' bid to double its Australian flights. In July, Catherine King sat down with the Herald's London correspondent Latika Burke, who asked the minister precisely about this question. Latika reported, and I quote, "Minister denies searches of Australian women in Doha behind move to block Qatar Airways." That was the article's headline. And her article quotes King as saying, "We don't wish to progress further bilateral flight arrangements with Qatar." She denied the reason for blocking Qatar having greater access to Australia's aviation market was related to the treatment of women in the October 2020 incident. She told Latika, "I wouldn't link the decision not to continue to engage with Qatar. I'm sure Qatar will continue to come to Australia and continue to ask for air rights, and we don't want to consider that at the moment." So back in October 2020, 5 Australian women were subject to highly invasive strip searches at Doha Airport. This was as they were transiting through. Their lawyer had written to the minister. The strip search took place after a newborn baby had been abandoned in the transit area. Every woman was strip searched in an attempt to locate the baby's mother. This is what one of those Australian women, a young nurse from Victoria, told 60 Minutes about how she was physically violated.
There was an announcement by a male who didn't actually specify if he was the pilot or a police officer or a cabin crew. It was just a male's voice saying all females need to disembark the aeroplane and take their passports with them. And I was immediately panicked. I was just thinking, why do we have to get off the plane?
No question, the strip search was invasive and a violation of human rights. This was by Qatari authorities, though not by the airline. But we also have 2 Australians wrongfully imprisoned in China. And we don't block flights from their state-sponsored airline, Southern China. Cheng Lei, a mother of 2, hasn't seen her children in years. There's no sign of her release. And our Prime Minister Anthony Albanese just today confirmed he was planning a visit to China later this year.
Also confirmed the invitation from President Xi that I would accept an invitation and will visit China later this year.
And we still have flights coming from Qatar into Australia, so it's not as if the airline was banned over these invasive strip searches. This is a point that Shadow Defence Minister James Patterson made today.
If this was the real reason, why didn't she just say so the first time she was asked when this controversy first emerged weeks ago? Why has she given so many other contradictory explanations, and why is she only finally arriving at this as an explanation today? And if that is true, then if it's a human rights issue or a safety issue or a national security issue, well, then the question shouldn't be, is Qatar allowed to have 28 flights or 56 flights, but whether they should have any flights at all.
So was the invasive strip searches Was this the real reason why the Albanese government blocked Qatar's bid for extra flights, or was it to protect Qantas to help the airline keep its prices high? We know Qatar's international partner Virgin implored the Albanese government to allow these extra flights. And Virgin's chief executive has clearly said that the 28 extra flights in and out of the country would have allowed it to have lowered prices by up to 30%. In trainwreck responses today, Catherine King is not sure. She can't remember whether Qantas lobbied her over this decision.
Did you meet with or talk with Alan Joyce or any other Qantas representative before making this decision? It's a pretty simple, I'm sorry, Minister, it's a pretty simple question. Did you meet with Alan Joyce before making this decision?
I would have certainly.
In the immediate period before you made this decision, did you meet with Alan Joyce?
I have.
Surely, though, you would remember a conversation like this.
What I'm saying is I don't remember a conversation like this, but I can't be 100% sure they didn't have a conversation with someone in my office or someone in my department. So I am being careful to let you know very clearly that by the best of my recollection, where I was lobbied about this issue was on the whole on behalf of Qatar and Qantas discussions that I had, as I said in the Parliament yesterday, were primarily about same job, same pay. I know that my department, as is proper processes, undertook consultation with the whole with industry about this issue, and I was well aware, can I say very clearly, I was well aware of all of the stakeholder views in relation to this decision when I made it.
Now, Sabra Lane went back and forth with the minister for 2 minutes trying to get an answer from her. That was an edited extract. But the minister clearly didn't answer the question properly. She did say, as you heard, that she was well aware of all the stakeholder views in relation to the decision when she made it. So she knew what Qantas's position was, even if she can't recall what precise conversations took place. The allegation from the opposition is that the relationship between Albanese and Alan Joyce, between Labor and Qantas, is too cosy, too close, and that this lobbying from Qantas was the reason why Labor blocked Qatar's request. Catherine King has been repeatedly asked in media interviews and at press conferences just why she denied those extra flights. Albanese has been asked the same question. No adequate answer has been given. There's no answer that's in the public domain that actually explains the decision. National interest has been the vague reason given. The Albanese government, which, as you know, promised accountability in opposition, now hopes this answer of national security will suffice. It's not the only area where there's now a lack of transparency. Defence Minister Richard Marles still refusing to answer questions about how he racked up a $3.6 million travel bill on private RAF flights. Andrew Hastie, Shadow Defence Minister, opened question time today by asking Richard Marles questions about his use of the military jets. The question wasn't answered. Instead, Marles gave a convoluted answer attacking the opposition over its multiple defence ministers, also its handling of the summer bushfires by Scott Morrison.
Australians are seeing the prices of everything go up under this government, including airfares, which are up as much as 50% from 3 years ago. To add insult to injury, Qantas flights are regularly cancelled and luggage is lost. How many times has the acting Prime Minister taken a Defence VIP flight from Canberra to Avalon Airport to go home from work?
And this is what the Shadow Minister chooses to raise, and it says everything about a party which gave us 7 different Defence Ministers in the course of the last decade. In the face of the biggest bushfires that we had as a country, they used the Australian Defence Force to cut an ad to raise money for the Liberal Party.
Catherine King also spoke about Scott Morrison's multiple ministries. She also spoke about the collapse of Virgin when she was asked questions about aviation competition and who she consulted with in Cabinet about the decision to block Qatar Airways' bid for extra flights. Coalition scandals will not help King or Marles climb out of their own. But back on Richard Marles, Instead of offering more accountability or explanation for his flights, Richard Marles is now claiming to be the victim. He claims he's going to have to upgrade his security arrangements because a journalist who has been reporting on this flight scandal approached him to say hello. Let me just repeat that because this is unbelievable. Richard Marles, the Defence Minister of Australia, is now claiming he'll need increased security, permanent security, full-time security, because journalist Samantha Maiden, who broke the story of his travel scandal, said hello to him as he was standing around having a chat with another politician on Tuesday morning. He was about to go for a jog. It was around 7 a.m. Sam Maiden was leaving Parliament House after she'd done an appearance on the breakfast television show Sunrise, where she was speaking about his travel scandal, and she pulled over to say hello. She was going to ask him questions. He hasn't been responding. Now he claims he'll need more security, it seems, to keep these pesky journalists who want accountability away. This is unbelievable. Have a look.
Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles is set to have his security detail increased, with a review to be carried out by the Australian Federal Police. He's been facing scrutiny over the cost of chartered defence planes. The opposition has been wanting more detail on the flights to be released to justify the cost of $3.6 million. He has said he stands by every flight as part of his parliamentary business. He's also said he can't release more detail because of security advice that it would lead to people being able to observe a pattern of travel.
And we'll bring you more on that as the show progresses, because his specific reason was Samantha Maiden approaching him Tuesday morning at Parliament House. This lack of transparency is unbelievable, and it gets worse. Albanese is refusing to speak about the biggest scandal engulfing his government. Why? Because he's overseas and he won't take questions about what he calls domestic matters. Domestic matters. That means issues affecting Australians. He wants the press gallery to travel with him. He's brought the press gallery with him, but he doesn't want them to ask any difficult questions. First, Ben Packham from The Australian tried to ask him about The Voice yesterday. Here's what happened.
I'd rather not get into, as you know, my practice. I'm happy to discuss. I'm happy to discuss those issues back in Australia on Monday.
And then my Sky News colleague Olivia Casely today asked him about Qatar, a scandal that could very well bring down his transport minister. He didn't want to know about it.
Last one.
Catherine King says that she spoke with colleagues prior to making the Qatar decision. It's domestic and international.
No,
it's domestic and international.
Last one.
Did she speak to you or seek your advice?
That is not.
Do you still have confidence in your transport minister?
Come on. Of course I do.
I mean, he made it seem like Olivia Casely was doing the wrong thing by asking him about the single biggest story of the week. Just remember, this is the Prime Minister of Australia, elected on a platform of accountability and transparency after the multiple scandals of the coalition government. But now that he's facing his own scandals, he won't take questions because he's a 7-hour flight away.